Reverend Fathers, brothers and sisters, my paper is entitled, After Transhumanism, Outlines of Deep Essentialism. Before I can decide to cross the road, I must first think that it is possible, and before a surgeon can raise his scalpel to mutilate a child's body, he must think that one sex can turn into another. The first belief, however, is local, concerning only this space or that, leaving the essence of space itself undisturbed. Whereas the second is universal, postulating that there are neither male nor female essences at all, but only ephemeral phantasms, which we call identities. It exemplifies the peculiarly modern view that reality as such is fluid and malleable, and that the experience of what Polish sociologist Zygmunt Bauman calls liquid modernity. If nothing is essential, then everything is evanescent, capricious, and insignificant. There are no essential differences between men and women, humans and beasts, men and machine, gods and mortals. And according to Michel Foucault, no difference between truth and fiction, knowledge and power. Thus, Foucault's truth claims themselves, which he freely admits are fictions, lead to an inexorable imperative. We must contest or subvert every claim that there is anything essential. The truth of thought and action alike must be violent or transgressive, a restless negativity in search of an object, pure opposition, the signature intent of Milton's Satan, of Goethe's Mephistopheles, and of the Hegelian dialectic, whose movement of relentless negation made it so attractive to Karl Marx. Thought must prepare for activity. The transhumanism of philosophers and intellectuals must precede the transhumanism of the operating room, of the laboratory, or of cyberspace, the thoughts making the actions possible. And this transhumanist nexus of thought and practice has wrought a radical uprooting of human nature itself. For of the essential dimensions of human life that Hannah Arendt elucidates in her 1956 work, The Human Condition, for example, natality and mortality, individual and community, contemplation and action, public and private, past and future, all these are now expunged as inessential by transhumanist thinkers and ideologues, opening up boundless manipulation, the space for boundless manipulation through transhumanist technologies and modes of social control. How have we arrived at this point of radical fluidity, this inessential world in which power alone prevails? Ours is increasingly a world without any enduring waymarks, bereft of a world order, in relation to which our lives must be made harmonious, or can be made harmonious. Yet all pre-modern societies have believed that there were deep and unchanging realities accessible through higher modes of knowledge, kinds of knowledge that required certain prerequisites of soul and body, certain preparations. What was known through this higher knowledge was what Plato called the invisible looks, eidos, of things, that is, their forms, and what Aristotle called essences, the eternal realities that made up both the visible and invisible worlds. Summing up the wisdom of pagan antiquity, Plato also arrived at several other insights that served to prepare for patristic Christianity. That all these forms or essences, these originals of which particular things are images, are themselves images of a higher reality, reflections of what he called the good or the one. That the soul must first prepare itself if it is to apprehend these essences through bodily exercise and through strengthening the mind, for example, by the study of mathematics. That those who had finally glimpsed these higher essences of things faced a further difficulty when trying to express these eternal realities within the world of becoming, explain these unities within the world of plurality. the essences became fragmented, fractured like pure white light broken up by a prism. As Father Pavel Florensky would put this many years later, when higher noetic truths, and especially religious truths, are expressed discursively through one word after another, one concept after another, they become antinomies, that is, opposing beliefs that both appear to be true. The sophists, paid professors of marketplace wisdom, truth vendors against whom many of Plato's writings were directed, seized upon these antinomies. They exploited this worldly fragmentation of eternal truths to claim that there were no essences at all, no truth, but only the advantage of the stronger, thereby sowing the seeds of transhumanism, toxic seeds that required 2 millennia to fully germinate. The early church fathers understood this antinomial quality of truth, especially when they tried to put into words the pure light of Christ that they had apophatically experienced. Factions arose, championing one fragmentary truth or another, for example, claiming that Christ was only human or only divine. That is, some wanted to replace noetic, experiential, inexhaustible truths with simple, tidy, rational explanations. And to designate this kind of clinging to only one part of the truth, this rational one-sidedness that claims to be everything, they gave the word Emeritus, or choosing, the distorting choice of one aspect of eternal truth against all the others. Its English translation is heresy, taking one part and not the other. Soon, both East and West proceeded beyond Greek philosophy, but in divergent ways. In its understanding of essences, the West tended towards certain one-sided orientations. Steering a Neoplatonic course, Augustine emphasized the eternal, rendering essences as ideas in the mind of God, and thus concluding that our knowledge of essences involved knowing the very mind of God, apprehending the divine essence itself. Whereas many scholastics followed Aristotle, pursuing the opposite extreme, demoting the incalculable depths of essences into substantial forms, explanatory principles that uprooted the essences from their moorings in divine love, while reducing their transcendent reality into abstract concepts. And perhaps more than anything else, it was this view of substantial forms that discredited essentialism in the West, their popular caricatures binding the indefinable mystery of the essential to accidents of time and place. Unsurprisingly, after Thomas, an assault on the very concept of essence begins. William of Ockham maintains that what we call essences are merely our own generalizations about things, existing only in our own minds. And this prepares for a shallow empiricism that takes no regard of essences at all. Alongside a scientific reductionism that reduces our knowledge of things to what can be known through mathematics, at the dawn of modernity, any kind of essentialism seems utterly outmoded. And Kant even insists we cannot know things themselves at all. Finally, it is Nietzsche who lays the foundation for Foucault and the transhumanist project. Nietzsche imports the concept of value from economics, proclaiming that what we once understood as essential realities are merely values, potent fictions created solely by our own valuations, just like in economics. And these valuations, in turn, are merely expressions of the will to power. Thus, by creating values, we become world creators, fulfilling the serpent's prophecy, "You shall be as gods." And today, any suggestion that things have their own essences is dismissed, often with hostility, as an imposition of our own will upon others. Enter the era of transhumanism. But is this nihilistic decline irreversible? Must we see essences as so transcendent that they have no bearing upon concrete realities, or so shallow that we insist that girls must wear pink and boys must wear blue? What if instead there could be a deep essentialism, retrieving the noetic mystery that essences once held, recognizing that certain modes of asceticism must provide access to them, and acknowledging that they can have different historical and cultural articulations, while insisting that they are eternal and close to God, carrying his divine creative energies. Like the Latin West, the Eastern Fathers found much to correct in Greek philosophy. But more importantly, they assimilated into living religious experience and therefore transformed it. They understood that the only adequate approach to the one, that is, to the true God, was not through rational intellect, but through the living relation to a person. They saw that the asceticism leading to this relation involved not the honing of his discursive thinking, but the purification of the heart. Against the philosophers, they maintained that the essence of created things, although accessible to the purified heart, receded from conceptual capsules, were in fact ultimately mysterious, essentially resistant to rational explanation. And above all, they understood that although the divine energies are profoundly active throughout the concrete reality of this world, speaking through every created thing, God himself should be understood as absolutely unknowable in his own essence. These insights led far beyond those of Greek philosophy, which they elevated and perfected. They provide us today with a powerful and efficacious understanding of essences, a knowledge that can guide us through the treacherous world of transhumanism, through it and out of it, past it. Their exposition here, however, can be no more than an outline. First, from the early patristic era, spiritual growth was understood as a threefold path. First, an ascetic preparation, a purification, catharsis of the heart, allowing us to see beyond the conventional views of society and the riptides of our own passions. Second, an illumined seeing into the essence of things becomes possible, reacquainting us with the true meanings and intelligibilities of the world. This is theoria physici, the contemplative seeing or illumined intuition into the nature of things. Finally, this comprehension of the deeper meanings of creation becomes itself a ladder to union with the Creator, which the Fathers called theosis. But what is it that is seen by this illumined seeing, heard by this inspired listening? Orthodox thought has found two complementary ways of articulating the answer, each offering a different orientation. First, from the earliest centuries of patristic thought, it was seen that every created being held an inner depth of meaning and intelligibility, a constitutive logos that revealed the refracted presence of the divine logos, manifesting God's will as it is experienced in that being. This view was most fully developed by St. Maximus the Confessor, who saw these logi of creation as part of the great incarnational will of God for creation. Not only does each being possess its own unique logos, each expressing something that God has to say through that created being, but these logi cohere into increasingly greater wholes, revealing the book of nature as a great library of psalms. At the same time, a second parallel tradition understands creation as an ontological symbol. St. Ephraim the Syrian, for example, maintains that before written scriptures, God reveals himself within creation through symbols, she called raza, every creature teaching us something about its creator. A century later, St. Dionysius articulates a symbolic theology portraying how every being reveals in a hidden way the edifying immanence of the transcendent creator. This theology of the symbol is most recently propounded in the later philosophy of Pavel Florensky, who maintains that, as he puts it, the world is a symbol that is itself full of symbols, while stressing that symbol must be understood here as neither semiotic nor linguistic at all, but rather ontological. To say that creation is a symbol means that it is a visible manifestation of invisible realities in its very being. Finally, both ways of expressing this the underlying realities of creation, either as immanent words, logi, of the divine logos, or as visible symbols revealing the invisible presence of God, clarify the concept of essence, which is now heavily sedimented with historical accretions and is problematic. Understood as logos, the flower expresses a word from the divine logos, and understood as symbol, it exhibits the metaphysical depths through which the revelation addresses us, and each of us. Taken together, they secure the possibility of a deep essentialism, a recognition that far from being fluid, the nature of every creature reveals an everlasting word of the eternal. And just because it proceeds from the eternity that it expresses, this utterance is ultimately itself unutterable. And those terms are from 2 Corinthians 1, 12-4, or 12:4. Lacking knowledge of the nature of things, we are dazed and confused, adrift in a fallen and dangerous world, faring worse than in the ship allegory of Plato's Republic. Here, a strong ship's captain is imprisoned by mutinous sailors, ignorant of navigation, with one faction after another recklessly steering the ship's passage. Our own situation is even worse because Plato's Greece had implicitly retained much of the traditional guiding wisdom that Western modernity has now jettisoned. Thus, without comprehending what and how things really are, our voyage will founder upon the mirages and chimeras of posthumanism and other fashionable ideologies. But whose insights into these deeper meanings of things can guide us today? 4 sources may be suggested in ascending order of reliability. First, we ourselves are rarely unfamiliar with these deeper insights into the essence of things, even though our own passions and the ideological fog of social constructivism make us doubt what we truly know. This is especially the case for those working near to the deeply symbolic elements of creation, sun and sea, earth, rain, and the fecundity of nature, those whose very work demands heedfulness to the God-given natures of things. Second, and somewhat more reliable, poets and artists still offer noetic thoughts, insights about the world, although less reliably than before, when artists like Bach and Rublev sought to express essential insights through their immersion in sacred realities, nourished by ascetic devotion to their arts. Third, holy ascetics, with whom our dark and wayward times has been abundantly and providentially blessed, offer us even more powerful insights into the truth of things, drawing from the deep wells of their own illumined experience. And finally, the Holy Church, preserved in Orthodox Christianity, is the great repository of wisdom about the nature of created things and creation as such, ancient and trustworthy knowledge without which safe passage is inconceivable. We must be forthright and courageous in transmitting this wisdom to new generations, lest the perilous waters of modernity submerge the buoys and beacons we need for safe navigation. Thank you.